So I have to talk to my.
Welcome you to BlackUSA.News morning show. My name's Donnie Glover. Good morning. How are you, Kavette?
I'm doing well. Good morning. My name is Kavette Minor Kane. Good morning, Black USA.
Did you see the Meghan Markle interview?
I did not see the Meghan Markle interview. I was watching financial news this weekend.
Neither did I. A lot of people seem to have been talking about it.
Yep.
I saw a post this morning. A young lady said, I can't believe that people are shocked at what happened in terms of how the royal family is treating her. But the post also said that people apparently don't know the history of England. Colonizing and imperialism.
The slavery was there first?
No. No. Well, part of it, yeah, but they have a history of not liking black people. That's nothing new. It's kind of like you're going into a Klan rally expecting to get love. What do you think?
Donnie, that is universal. You know, that has been a worldwide promoted belief. You know, I lived in Puerto Rico for 5 years, and
what are you talking about?
I was discriminated against in Puerto Rico because of my dark skin, because people thought that I was Dominican. And then when I opened my mouth and they saw that or heard that I was American, then they, you know, kind of turned their nose up at me for that too. So, you know, I love people, you know, but everybody has their biases, you know, and for me as a Black woman, I recognize that I face double the challenge in overcoming that, you know, than anyone else.
I'm a little confused. You have a double challenge, being a woman and being Black?
Yes, sir.
Well, being a Black man, Black man isn't at the, you know, we're not the most embraced species in America either. I hope you realize.
Well, I know that Black men are not embraced in the U.S., but Black women have a greater challenge in terms of even overcoming some of the biases that men have, because they feel like women should stay in their place, you know. And the question is, what is that place? And that place is being redefined by women who are stepping up and stepping out to identify and help them to understand that our place is not just at home in the kitchen. You know, our place is in the marketplace. Our place is where we choose for it to be. You know,
what about those Black men who are not like that, Kavette?
Well, there are many Black men who are not like that, which is those who have supported, and there are many, you know, non-Black men who are not like that.
I'm not talking about non-Black men. I'm talking about Black men.
About Black men who have supported Black women in making strides to reach above and elevated Black women. Because, you know, most Black men have a Black mom. So, you know.
Yes, let's give a shout out to those Black brothers that have stood by and fought for those sisters all along. Because I don't know about those other guys. That's not my charge.
Absolutely. But we would be completely naive to not recognize the challenges that Black women face in the world.
Well, Black men face those same challenges, particularly if they are involved with those Black women. Because when she comes home, guess who hears about her date?
Usually nobody. There's a lot of women.
That's another blanket statement.
Because
we're going to get on.
Oftentimes when women share their challenges, or women have shared their challenges, they have been ridiculed about it. You know, I've talked to many women who just keep it to themselves or talk amongst their girlfriends because the men don't want to hear about it. They have their own problems. That's
a blanket statement. You know? Those men don't want to hear about it. So maybe they are with the wrong people.
Maybe.
Well, we're going to talk about real estate. We're going to bring up Mr. Angelo Cooper. Good morning, Angelo. Unmute yourself and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Black USA.
Good morning, Mr. Cooper. How are you today?
I'm fabulous, Kavette. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can you do me a favor and wipe off the
yeah, come on out, Angelo. Wipe the screen. You look a little foggy, like you're in London. You gotta go get that, what do you call it? Mr. Clean wipe.
He's just getting back from seeing that Meghan Markle interview.
I wouldn't put that charge. I've known this man since '95. I would not give him that charge.
It's all good.
I'm wiping my screen now.
Okay.
All right. Perfect.
So you want to plug your show?
Oh, yes. This evening, I will be on at 7 p.m. with Mindful Money Moment. We'll be talking about how to take a moment to be mindful about our money, how our emotional mental wellness affects our financial management. And I will be on to this evening with Heather D. Horton, who is a grief recovery specialist, as well as with Elizabeth Guthridge, who is a credit repair specialist. So we're going to talk about that.
All right. Good morning, Darius. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Darius.
So, Angelo, tell us about the Coop Group.
Tell you about the Coop Group. Kevin, I need to be on that show later because that's in line with some of what I do. The money management, the credit repair. Absolutely. So the Coop Group is my company. The Coop Group has been in existence for over 22 years. And the Coop Group is, I'm a real estate professional. I don't want to say I'm a realtor, real estate agent, because I practice and I'm familiar with all aspects of real estate. I started out as a real estate investor. I'm also a real estate developer, and I do residential and commercial real estate. So just to say I'm a real estate agent would be a disservice to myself and all my many years of labor, basically. So, yes.
Awesome. So what would you say is how is the greatest change or I guess challenge that you guys have faced during this time of COVID and having to pivot your business?
Yeah, that's interesting because with COVID, business has actually spiked, as ironic as it may seem. And that's one thing that I wanted to touch on because I believe there's a misnomer, especially amongst our people, because they believe, oh, it's a pandemic. We shouldn't be buying. We need to stay in the house. We need to barricade our doors, basically, right? So if you pay attention to the climate, one thing you will see is because of the pandemic, interest rates are at an all-time low. So it has stimulated the market to, make people get out and purchase. So, people are actually taking out loans and they're really not paying any interest on the money. So it's a phenomenal time to sell. It's a good time to buy commercial real estate. And it's always a good time to purchase anyway, not just for the investment side of things, but of course the 40 acres in the middle aspect, that the necessity of having shelter basically. But that's one thing that I wanted to touch on, the fact that it's such a great time to actually sell and buy commercial real estate. You have your typical run of the mill. Oh, it's a great time to buy. It's always a great time to buy. We need to have some place to live, but again, it's an exceptional time to sell and buy commercial. So
you said that buying commercial real estate was, with the aspect of making an investment. Would you not agree that purchasing even your residential home is an investment and something that should be valued as such?
I do. I agree with that. But I think oftentimes, as far as the residential side, we get too caught up in the investment aspect of things. And, we need shelter. And I think you can observe from the housing crisis that occurred before, people, it wasn't, oh, I need to buy a home so I can have an asset in home ownership. The thing was I need to buy because, I want to be able to, pull out a bunch of equity and tap into, maybe a higher resale value. And I think when the market tanked, it really was a rude awakening for people. And they kind of got back to, let me just enjoy my investment instead of using it as leverage to create a bunch of debt.
Well, I think that the shift that needed to be made was in the mindset of being able to pull the equity out immediately, because real estate is a long-term investment. I would compare it to, another long-term investment, which would be the stock market. You think about how the stocks go up and down and up and down. Well, if you are in it for the short run, then you'll lose, because you're going to pull money out, or you're going to, take your money back probably at a loss when the stocks are down. And that's a great possibility, or not at the greatest gain when the stocks have just gone up a little. But so with the housing market as well, it takes, years. I mean, mortgages are 30 years. So you think about making a 30-year investment, then you're not going to think about taking that equity out until maybe later down the line, 10, 15 years into the purchase, and being able to really see the value. But then if you take all the equity out, then what have you left for your heirs? So helping our community to understand the investment opportunity that exists with real estate, and not just looking at, the immediate equity that they would be able to get. What would you encourage there?
So one thing I wanted to say was, it's not a 30-year investment contract. It's a popular belief. That's what the bank wants you to think, because that's how they make their money, from the interest. The average consumer doesn't know that if you make one additional payment a year towards your principal, you can reduce the life of the loan by at least 7 years. So I wanted to definitely express, I respectfully, disagree with that. Moving on, Quebec, you asked another question.
How would you encourage our community to, because this is Black USA News, right, to look at the long-term investment of real estate, and how we would be able to, because I've been looking into, obviously a lot of folks have been the generational or the racial wealth gap in the United States, and how significant that is. It's obvious that we're not going to be able to overcome that even in a generation. It would take 228 years to overcome that wealth gap at this point, because they've got such a great lead on us at this point. But there are steps that we can take. There are things that we need to be conscious of in the process of building our wealth. So in terms of real estate, what would you encourage for our community?
Yeah, certainly. I would definitely encourage people to contact a real estate professional such as myself, and inquiring about purchasing. These people are paying a rent. They're purchasing homes for other people rather than purchasing their own homes. And ironically enough, the rates are so low that it's truly not uncommon for people to have a mortgage for less than what they're actually paying for rent. Even if the mortgage is a couple $100 more, that real estate is also a tax advantage. So, they'll reap the benefits of a higher tax return or refund to actually offset that, And so some people will argue everything's a gift and a curse, but the benefits, definitely outweigh the disadvantages. It's just, making sure you consult with a professional. Of course, there's maintenance with anything. So, if you just don't get lax, you take pride in that investment. You get your annual inspections. You inquire and utilize your resources. Then you can be ahead of the game and narrow that generational wealth gap.
Absolutely. Hi, so Darius, I didn't know if you had any questions that you'd like to ask Mr. Angelo, Mr. Cooper this morning.
Yes, I did. Good morning, brother Angelo.
How you doing, Darius?
I'm all right. I see you got over 20 years in the real estate game. Now, within those 20 years, have you ever thought about how to address the homelessness crisis that's going on in Baltimore? Because there are a lot of abandoned buildings, and there are even more homeless people that are out there that can use those properties.
Yes. As I indicated, I'm an investor. I was an investor before I was an actual real estate agent, and I'm also a developer. So I actually own apartment buildings, and I also purchase land, purchase properties for the sake of development. So I'm a resource with respect to that. However, what I am finding is your local municipalities or municipalities in general can make things very challenging for a person like myself, whether it be, when you run out to these people and they're not fulfilling their obligations, you have to go down this rabbit hole in order to get some kind of recourse. So that serves as a deterrent. When it comes to pulling permits to, improve the aesthetics of the neighborhoods and increase the resale value, when you have to go through the bureaucracy, that serves as a deterrent. So it's more on a macro level with respect to getting the municipalities to actually buy into the initiatives and what you're trying to do, rather than trying to give you such a hard time, any investor or developer. So that's one step towards, serving as some type of remedy for that challenge.
Well, let me ask you, Angelo, what does the future of Baltimore look like when you consider COVID, you consider what Darius alluded to, the vacants, when you consider the crime here in Baltimore? What's the future look like?
The future.
Damn, that bad?
No, not at all. I just wanted to be able to articulate it. I mean, you hit me with a lot, Danny. No, I mean, the future looks very bright, as bleak as things may sound, and it goes back to people, taking the community back. And so the first step is, if they can start making moves within themselves, then they can empower other people. That's where it starts. So once again, go out, take advantage of this pandemic, take advantage of the fact that rates are low, take advantage of the fact that you have a lot of, commercial buildings and a commercial space available, and you can negotiate because of the pandemic. These, the industry is hurting. So it's just a matter of us wanting to, put this whole challenge on our back and make something happen with it. And again, not to plug myself, but I'm a resource,
I was speaking with another real estate professional, and they said that nobody is getting commercial space at the present. That's what this one particular professional said. And she pointed to the malls, that it is very difficult to rent any space inside of malls right now because nobody wants it.
So that's the problem. We need to stop renting. Right. These commercial owners, they're hurting. And so we need to be purchasing the malls and all this other commercial space, because right now, so the real estate industry is booming as a whole. The commercial side of things in the trenches, which it's an area opportunity to negotiate, even if you don't have the good credit, you can negotiate for the seller to hold financing. They want to make some money. So it's that whole rent. No, buy. Now is the time, basically.
Well, let's look at Mondawmin Mall. You can't buy any of that space, can you?
I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure it's possible.
You saying you can buy space versus renting it?
Well, obviously, you're talking about a group of investors to purchase the whole mall. So on that scale, I'm not talking about the small space. So I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday who's a pastor of a church, and we actually were discussing the whole benefit of buying something like a Mondawmin Mall, and that's, one would argue, that's a lot of space for one business or organization to use. Well, if you buy, then you can actually then rent to other establishments and businesses to utilize that space, kind of like a mixed use space, basically, So, that's one approach. Maybe it requires a group of investors. Maybe you'll deal with renting on some aspect, but on a macro level, you know, if a group of us purchase that space, then we can work wonders with it, because there's a need. You know, as convenient as it is to stream, there is a need for brick and mortar locations of physical presence.
With our current condition under COVID, Mr. Cooper, what would be the positive outlook of making that kind of investment at this point in time? We just talked about how, you know, the current malls are having trouble renting space because no one is going to them. So, you know, why would our group of investors from our community now make an investment in this large property, you know, that is a mall location, you know, a couple of entrances with, you know, open space on the inside, and then try to rent them out to small retailers from our community under the current conditions? Like, what is the hope for that? What would be the investment that would, you know, bring us back?
Well, I personally would take something like a Mondawmin Mall, and you can look at the, and this is going back, the concept of Old Town Mall. And then when you go out on the West Coast, they have all this outdoor space. And then they say, oh, this is something that started on the West Coast. No, it started on the East Coast, actually. And then you can look at your Hunt Valleys, or you can look at your Westview malls. Remember, at one point, that used to be indoor mall space. And then the investors became smart. What they decided to do was, instead of having all this dead space, let's make it an outdoor mall, or make it where these merchants are actually, you know, outdoor. So, you know, you don't have a whole bunch of wasted mall space. So that's probably the first thing that I would do, because you then maximize the space as an investor. From that point, you know, if you decide you want to subdivide and sell the space, that's an option. Or, you know, I mean, the whole benefit is right now, for years, the, you know, commercial industry has been pimping us. And right now, because they're, you know, everything is kind of like in the trenches, it's such a good opportunity to negotiate a good deal with respect to that. It's, you know, the whole key is to make some money, or they won't make any money at all, basically. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Can you tell us how a negotiation goes down?
Well, in order for any negotiation to be successful, all parties have to win, contrary to popular belief, because if one person feels like they're getting the short end of the stick, then things are going to cease from there. So it's determining what each individual goals are, and then having somebody, you know, communicate those goals to someone, you know. That's going to be the start of any negotiation.
So now, would you say, Mr. Cooper, that, okay, we've looked at gentrification in so many cities around the U.S. now, you know, how they're making these improvements in these communities, but they're welcoming in to these Black communities now those from outside of the Black community. So now, if we're, you know, taking an interest in redeveloping our community so that we can have an improved standard of living, but then maintaining our communities, starting with a mall location like that type of investment would really be a great place to start in redeveloping and improving.
I agree.
Okay. So then, with the real estate investment groups that we have, need to, you know, take an interest in, even we've got a lot of major real estate investors who work very singularly, but then coming together in, a joint venture. How would you recommend a group come together in that way? Is that something that you would organize, or, you know, would you make an outreach to different real estate investors to create a program or a project like that?
Yes, that's something that I will put on my shoulders. One thing I wanted to mention, Kavette, right? Our community is definitely in a state of emergency, because it's very unfortunate, because I'm seeing Asians coming through, and they're buying in places like Emerson Village. I travel a lot, and it's an ongoing epidemic on the West Coast. They've taken over San Francisco. They've taken over Southern California. Now I'm seeing it happen rapidly in Baltimore. And these Asians, they have money. They're actually going above price, no appraisal contingencies. And we know that they're not going to be living in these urban communities. They're investments, so we really need to get on the ball with that. That's what I'll say first and foremost. But yes, that's something that I would actually put on my shoulders. It's I mean,
so then how would those real estate investors who might be interested in a project like this, how would they get in contact with you?
So the best way to reach me, I'll give a couple different forms of contact, but the best way to reach me more immediately is my cell phone. That number is 410-977-5630. And I'm accessible at that number daily. I tell people, if you try me and don't get me, leave me a message or text me. And if I don't respond the same day, I'll respond by the next day. My website is locateMarylandRealEstate.com. So you can abbreviate Maryland or spell it out. LocateDCRealEstate.com as well. So
okay, awesome. So you've got this area covered. You covering the DMV for us?
I got it on lock.
You're gonna add in the V later.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna add in the V later.
Yes, exactly. So
that'll work. But that's a very good idea. That I would love to see something like that come together and come to fruition, because we've talked a lot about the challenge that exists where gentrification is occurring, but this would be a solution, and also helping to adjust the thinking in our neighborhoods to see that our community is actually coming in to support our community. That is absolutely necessary. It's absolutely something we need.
Mr. Cooper, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, have you all seen Judas and the Black Messiah?
I have not yet.
Yes, and so I think that's a good way for our listeners to kind of get started to kind of, adopt that mentality or
adopt what mentality? We haven't seen it.
Well, I don't want to give it away, but it's about the Black Panther movement, basically, So I'll leave it there, because if anybody looks up at the Black Panther movement, you'll pretty much see exactly what they were founded on, and without giving things away. And while they're watching, the light bulb may go off, and they'll say, "Okay, that's what this brother was talking about. Let me give him a call." So that's my final thought of the day.
Good deal. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Thank you for joining us today. Have a powerful day in the Lord.
Thank you. God bless you all.
All right. Take care.
Speaking of the Lord, we're going to bring in Reverend Dr. Al Hathaway Sr. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, my brother. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, sir. So we've seen you in the news lately, Rev. We've seen you in the news lately. What is ACT?
Accountability, credibility, transparency, now in Baltimore City.
Okay.
And what's it all about?
Basically, it kind of grew out of doing the election campaign. We were basically saying that we needed a new generation of political leadership that really had as their hallmark accountability, credibility, and transparency. Coming out and through the election, we've got a new series of persons elected, new citywide officers, a third of the city councilors elected. So then we now have evolved to creating in each of the councilmatic hubs what we call faith-based hubs. And in some instances, we have faith-based clusters. And their goal is to focus with the council members in those districts to have measurable improvements in each of the councilmatic districts in Baltimore City.
And measurable improvements in what areas?
All of the areas. When you think of our schools, we have to have really strategic improvement in our schools. When you think about the conditions surrounding our schools, we need to have strategic improvements in them. I'll give you a case in point. When you think about Baltimore City, and I know you just had a issue of a session on home ownership, just think about this. The largest owner of substandard property in Baltimore City is the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. They own a large number of scattered site houses. And right now, what they're doing is they're auctioning off those scattered site houses to investors. Why don't those persons who live in those houses have the opportunity to use their vouchers to purchase the houses they live in? I mean, that's just a simple solution that I think we need to advocate for. If we want to stabilize our communities, we need to make certain that there are homeowners that live in our communities. And if a person has been renting and using, and the city has been using this voucher to pay the rent, why can't that voucher be used to pay the mortgage?
So has anyone on the city council bought into this idea?
Well, you got the scoop on that one. I haven't even let that in on them yet. you got the scoop on that one, but I was just following up as to how you have a measurable change in a local district. We asked the city councilman, how many scattered site houses? Now you got the scoop. Be quite honest, Donnie, when this breaks, you got the scoop. How many scattered site houses are owned by Housing Authority of Baltimore City in your councilmatic district? And now let's then begin to move in a systematic way to increase home ownership by the HUD voucher to home ownership program. That is just one, and you got that scoop. You see, that's because I love you, Doc, and I know that you're about the community, that I'm giving you scoops. You're in my brain before I even release it.
Well, your church is in, who's your councilman for the church? Costello?
Yeah, we're in the 11th councilmatic district.
And I'm right next door to you in John Bullock's area.
Man, he's got some work to do.
Well, that's why I asked, do we have any buy-in from these city council people?
I think that's the work that we have to do. And that's why we issued Act Now. We've sent notices to each of the council members that we want to meet with the faith-based hubs in their areas. In fact, on this coming Wednesday, we're going to do a walk around the area of Augusta Savage with Councilman John Bullock this coming Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. So I think we've got to cause the council members to really focus that you have a responsibility to literally be managers of your councilmatic districts. And when you think about it, I just tell you, there's approximately 43,000 persons that live in each councilmatic district. And it's almost impossible for constituent service to be reached to those 43,000 people. So you're going to need partnerships, you're going to need relationships, you're going to need allies, and one such ally will be Act Now Baltimore.
So now, what would you recommend that those constituents do in terms of reaching their council persons for representation? I mean, at this point, 43,000 people sounds like a lot of power.
It is.
If they're a movement together, they would absolutely be able to have an effect on, the influence of that person.
I mean, quite honestly, what happens is a person gets elected. They work very hard to get elected. In most councilmatic districts, you can get elected with less than 6,000 persons voting for you. So you got a small percentage of the number of persons, 15% at best, that vote for you. There's another 85% that have not, but you still got to engage that 85% more of those peoples in your community. So one of the things we're doing is just trying to be active, trying to stir the pot, trying to let people know that if we're going to have shared governance in Baltimore City, you have a role and a responsibility to play, but the council people have a responsibility to listen.
So yeah, that sounds good on paper, Doc. As you talked about, 15% participation, and hey, let me just call a spade a spade. The president of the Baltimore NAACP branch won with 43 votes. This is a branch with well over 1,000, maybe 2,000 members. If a progressive organization like the NAACP only had 43 people vote for the president, there's not a lot of optimism there when it comes to swaying these city council people, because as you know, they're just trying to win. And once they win, it's almost like auto cruise for 4 years.
Yeah, you're right. But one of the advantages that I think Act Now has that's somewhat different is we conducted a survey of over 16,000 people. We've surveyed in each of the councilmatic districts about approximately more than 1,000 persons in each district. We have their email addresses, we have their cell phone numbers. Then when you talk about the membership of our respective hubs, who people actually live in the city, we're talking about a communication with right now about 50,000 people. Our goal is over the next 6 months to drill down in each councilmatic district where we have really conversations and communication with at least 10,000 persons in each councilmatic district. So over the next 6 months, we're going to be working very hard at building a network of communications in this city of 140,000 people.
What role will the community development corporations in the vicinity play? You have Upton Planning Commission in between you and I. We have Druid Heights just north of you. Harlem Park has some things. Sandtown, Winchester has some things.
Yeah, you're correct, and I think on one side, I think we have to advocate for, and I believe we will advocate for community-based TIFs. See, that's you got to have real dollars coming to these communities. If you think about your area that you just described, it is a tragedy that State Center has not been developed. It's a tragedy that McCullough Homes has not been developed. It's a tragedy when you think about these public housing, Poe homes and Gilmore homes. When you think about these persons have not been transformed into places of choice. So really, we work in partnership with community development organizations that you've named, but they've got to get more bandwidth and they've got to get more strategic partners, and more dollars got to come into these neighborhoods and communities.
So what are the roadblocks to making that happen? Because we talk about, us being able to redevelop our communities. We just spoke to Mr. Cooper about creating a real estate investment group that would, participate in something like that. What would be the roadblocks or the challenges for a group like that now trying to come into a community and do the redevelopment?
I think one of the big challenges is that we've got to get more synergy between the agencies that control real estate in Baltimore City. See, that's the first step. You see, what happened under the administration of Mayor Catherine Pugh, she separated HABC from DHCD. And what that did was that created on the ground a disconnect around planning, around actions, and around activity. And I think
let's tell the whole thing. She re-separated because they were together, then they were apart, then they were together again. And so she split them back up. Yes. Remember, Dan Henson was in charge of both HABC and HCD during the Schmoke years.
And think about the synergy that you had in terms of redevelopment. During that time, you had synergy because you had one person accountable to the mayor to be able to ensure that there was community planning. And you think about that amazing, robust development that we had in Baltimore City that was inclusive in many ways, happened because there was synergy there. Now with them being separated, and you got to remember that the director of HABC does not report directly to the mayor. So the mayor really does not have control of HABC, and you've got this agency with its own bonding authority, with its own dollars, its own real estate asset that does not operate under the control and direction of the mayor.
So who is in control?
Excuse me?
Who is in control of that organization?
It's a board that's appointed by the mayor. This mayor has not yet had the opportunity to appoint his own board members to that board. So that's a board that's been appointed by previous administrations that sit and operate on this board.
Okay, so in order for him to be able to make the adjustment, those organizations you said need to be rejoined. He would have to do that. Does he have that opportunity at this point?
He has an opportunity, but I think it'll be very difficult. I got to give it to the mayor. He has a strategic plan. We got to allow him the opportunity for his strategic plan to play out. But I do think that he needs to recognize that he has to have control of the Housing Authority of Baltimore City so that he can make certain that when you think about community development in the local neighborhoods, both of those major agencies are in sync and together.
Darius, you've been a little left out. Any questions for Dr. Hathaway?
Yes, a couple questions. I wanted to ask, as far as you were saying, to sway those people, it's very hard. Like we were saying, it's very hard to just sway those people. Do you have any assistance from any local lawyers or local real estate agents or politicians that'll help you get it done a little bit sooner?
When you say sway, you mean the council members or the agency heads?
The council members.
Well, I mean, this is what I realize is that this is going to at least be a 4-year struggle. So this is not a one-off. This is a part of a constant push by the community to ensure that we have accountability, credibility, transparency. But one of the things that we do have is that we got a whole back office. So I've got strategic people, I've got videographers, I have access to lawyers. We have a whole array of services to bring to bear. But right now, what we want is this is important. We said to them that we are here to collaborate. We're also here to critique. But if necessary, we will confront. because we gotta make certain that the residents of Baltimore City have a quality of life that they deserve. And so, so Donnie, I'm going to be quite honest with you. We came up in an era where there were these kinds of advocacy platforms out of the faith community. That is normative for us. We know about that. And so here, and as a senior member of the faith community, I want to create a platform so that my younger clergy leaders will have a platform for which they can do advocacy. But for Act Now Baltimore, there was really not that kind of forum for them. And so I'm creating forum. I'm working very closely with the younger faith-based leaders to show them these are the ways and tactics and skills by which you engage and which you encounter. And prayerfully, we'll end up with a situation.
So you're showing them that it's going to be a longer fight, like you said, than the 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because for 4 years, they can stall us out.
No, we're not going to have no stalling. Now, if you remember, we've already called for open checkbook. We've called for open checkbook, and the mayor has said that within 100 days, he will have an open check platform in Baltimore City. That's April the 30th. So, so if you think about what an open checkbook means, is that to the check, we will be able to see where city finances go. It'll be on an open platform that's open to everyone. We'll see the income coming in. We'll see we'll see the revenue going out. That's going to be very significant in terms of transparency.
Rev, you talked about the faith-based community, and of course you're there at the historic Union Baptist Church. So many names come to mind. I don't know if you know this, but I was a Boy Scout in that church who actually played basketball when they had the gym there. But Reverend Vernon Dobson comes to mind, and what comes to mind also is the Goon Squad.
That's correct.
Is this the modern day version of the Goon Squad?
One of the blessings of Union Baptist Church, and I'm so proud to be the 10th pastor there. I'm so proud to be the 10th pastor there, is that there is a spirit really started by Reverend Dr. Harvey Johnson with the Mutual United Brotherhood of Liberty that says when you see injustice, you need to address it. Reverend Vernon Dobson with the Goon Squad understood that we needed political empowerment. And I think that mantle has now fallen on me, and I find that need and responsibility to advocate for people within the community now. And you're right. I think it is the evolution of what we once knew as the Goon Squad. It's all of that history comes to play, and I have a responsibility to put that kind of model in place.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Hathaway, because this is, or Dr. Hathaway, because this is a national platform, one of my questions has to deal with how are we, managing this same situation in cities across the U.S. in most majority Black cities across the U.S., whether it's D.C. or Detroit or, L.A. So are there any outlines that you've already looked at in reference to that to get you structure, or are there any influences that you can lend to other cities?
That's a very good. We've already been contacted by faith leaders from Chicago, from Philadelphia, as well as Detroit and St. Louis. And they're asking, what is this model? And how is this model, can this model be operative in our respective districts? It's amazing. We just launched this model. We began our soft launch in January 20th. And now we're in our real active March now. And now people are asking for platforms like this around the around cities around the country. So yes, we hopefully we can launch this in a way that it will expand through other cities.
Rev, come on now. This didn't just start in 2020. Rev, you organized a bunch of people to go down State Center. This is ongoing now, Rev. Come on now.
Well, I would say to you, you're right. I mean, we have to always have agitation to create change. And any time that we don't create agitation, as Frederick Douglass told us, it's like trying to have the wind. You got to do it. And it has to be done out of love. We want our city to be the best city in the world. But right now, our systems are misfunctioning and our systems are not working together. So we have to challenge the systems.
What happened with the State Center move? I mean, I remember mobs of people. You led mobs of people down the State Center. It was supposed to be about jobs. Am I wrong?
You're right. And I don't understand why the city political leaders are not jumping up and down, mad as can be, around the governor not letting loose that redevelopment of that significant area in West Baltimore. I mean, why should it just be faith leaders, community leaders? There should be non-negotiable. Now, State Center should be redeveloped. It will generate at least 500 jobs, high-paying jobs for persons in there. Not only that, the agencies that are there, their members are aging out. So there's government opportunities for jobs in State Center. So it really, I don't understand why our leaders are not jumping up and down about that.
Was it Hogan who stopped this or O'Malley?
Both fan. You know, they all kicked the ball down the field. O'Malley had the opportunity to do it almost 15 years ago. He kicked it down the field, right? Under the impression, thinking that Anthony Brown would be the governor and he would do it.
He couldn't have done that because he never once came out for Anthony Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'll let you handle politics. I'm just trying to deal with the after effects in the community.
I didn't see O'Malley anywhere in Anthony Brown's campaign. All Anthony Brown had to do was take a picture on Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah. But he seemed allergic at the time to our community.
I think he was, and I think as a result, we ended up with Governor Hogan. Governor Hogan made promises, but Governor Hogan has been devastating when you think about Baltimore City in terms of any real investment in Baltimore City. And I mean, keep in mind now, I mean, I know Hogan, and I say this to him very publicly. You know, State Center, Red Line have been detrimental.
I wanted to ask you about the Red Line. Did the Red Line connect the other lines?
Yeah. The key about the Red Line was that it was going to go all the way out to Baltimore County and connect that government anchor out in Baltimore County all the way to Johns Hopkins. So you was going to have from Baltimore County, Social Security, all of those healthcare facilities directly over to Johns Hopkins. And where it fell down was the people in Center City. Same thing happened during the I-83. The Center City said, we don't want those lines coming through our city. So they said, okay, let's do them underground. And they fought that underground, and as a result, gave away $900 million. That is crazy.
I want to share this with you, Rev. A lot of people don't know this, but my daddy had a funeral home in the 800 block of Madison Avenue, right off of MLK.
Right.
When they built State Center subway station, it destroyed all of the businesses in that area. So I, for one, am not a fan of the Red Line because I've seen a lot of businesses get displaced and never replaced. I think of West Side Development down there on Utah Street. They got all of those, including my favorite Hathaway. What was that? Hippodrome Hathaway's?
Yes.
They got rid of all of those long-time businesses down there, never to return. And so I'm leery when I hear they're going to dig up and it's going to be construction for 10, 15 years. And then, and I'm going to rest my case. Rev, we have the dumbest subway in the world. It goes from downtown straight out to Northwest Baltimore. Now, around the same time they built our subway, Atlanta was building one also, which is so egalitarian. It's a north-south leg and an east-west leg. But Baltimore is one leg that goes straight out to the northwest.
I'll tell you this. Not only were they building the MARTA in Atlanta, they always was building the subway system in Washington, D.C. And so you got to realize when you look at both of those two models, what was happening at that time. At that time, when you think about it, you had African-American mayors that insisted that the redevelopment will be inclusive. When they developed our subway system, we did not have an African-American mayor, and who was in many ways had disdain for the African-American community. So as a result, he just wanted to get people in and get them out.
So we're trying to build on sinking sand. That's the Christian song, right? All of it is sinking sand.
Yes.
It's sinking sand. It was done wrong from the beginning. How do you fix something? You know, that's like a crack baby. How do you fix a crack baby?
Well, I tell you this. I mean, if we want to press it all the way back, when I was up, we had the best rail system that you could ever possibly leave, because I just go jump on a streetcar and get anywhere that I wanted to go. And they covered over the tracks to give us this. I don't
know that they know what a streetcar is. Darius, you know what a streetcar is?
My uncle told me about them. like out San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right. San Francisco. But Baltimore had one of the most efficient streetcar systems in the country. You could literally go from east, west, north, south, and you could catch a streetcar, end up literally in Sparrows Point. So they destroyed that system. Basically, as African Americans were starting to get political power, they didn't want us to have control of systems such as that. I mean, it's really boils down to the issue of race and white supremacy when you really think about it.
Well, because transportation equates freedom.
Yes.
There was a mayor of this city named J. Barry Mahul in the turn of the 20th century. And he had two black antagonists, and they come from your discipline. One was George McMecken, and the other was Ashby Hawkins. And I hear that they stayed on Judge Barry Mahul's hind parts like white on rice. And J. Barry Mahul, I bring it up because he is known as the father of segregation.
Yes. During that time, what you had a movement going on called eugenics. And eugenics really came out of the Johns Hopkins mindset of President Wilson and others. And so there was this mindset that people of color were not of same equal genetic capacity as others. And so when you think about McMecken, when you think about my other attorney, that came out of Dr. Harvey Johnson and Union Baptist Church with his Mutual United Brotherhood of Liberty, with the Edward Warren coming in, being one of the first persons licensed to admitted to the Maryland bar. So that was a whole movement of the legal structure to challenge structures and systems in our city. And here you got a good lawyer on right now to challenge the system.
Mr. Bob, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Fair to million to everybody. Happy New Year. Happy Merry Christmas. All that kind of stuff. How you doing, Kiva? And my good friend, Dr. Hathaway. How you doing?
Hey, my brother, how you doing?
I'll see you tomorrow, actually.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
They asked me the question about the Black jurisprudence history of challenging systems in our city. And I was just sharing with them that you are in that same vein that we have with Edward Warren, McMecken, and with Ashby Hawkins and all of those other lawyers that challenge the systems and business as usual.
Yeah, I guess the difference is I came along at a time when I thought I was going to our position a little easy to put forward because we'd entered an era where much of the city leadership had been placed in the hands of Black folk. But quite frankly, over the last 40 years, I haven't seen any. It certainly hasn't been any easier. I'll just put it that way. That the same issues that were raised in 1975 or 76 through the 80s when Schaefer was still mayor, I still see those same issues for Black folk. In fact, the fact that this program is going on is testament to the fact that the same issues exist today for Black folk in Baltimore City. So the real question is,
what would you list as those major issues?
Well, I just got off a call preparing for a Wednesday hearing at the Board of Estimates. But for example, the City Council tonight may be considering a so-called public and project labor agreement, which would have the effect, if it becomes law, of requiring public works contracts in Baltimore City of a certain size, essentially to be manned by either union contractors or non-union contractors who agree to abide by certain terms that originate in union collective bargaining agreements. Now, here you might say, well, why is that? Don't we want people to earn more money? Of course we do. But before this bill, we already have the Davis-Bacon Act, which is a federal law that applies to all recipients of federal money, including Baltimore City, for these contracts. And we also have state laws that incorporate the Davis-Bacon rates in the city law. So, but the real problem is the bill was introduced without prior consultation with the members of the small or minority business community. In other words, we've got a council that's predominantly Black. We've got Black leadership, and you would think, and they knew that this bill, at least perceived by Black contractors, was detrimental to their interests, because this is not the first time it was introduced. It was introduced years ago. So you would think, therefore, that the Black leadership would come to the minority community and say, "We're thinking about doing this. What do you think? How will it help you?" But that didn't happen. That there was no prior discussion, and the answer is, well, we'll fix it. We'll make sure you're protected. But that's not the point. The point is, you didn't show the respect to begin with, and that lack of respect, which flows from, I think, a presumption that if the issues involved relate to Black folk, that anybody can speak to them. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have any particular knowledge. It doesn't really matter, because it's just Black folk business. We can handle it any way we want. And unfortunately, we've been taught that way. Yeah. Even our leaders were taught that way. And we react that way unconsciously. That's the problem.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion.
So we talked this morning about a couple of things. We talked about transportation being a major issue. We talked about jobs. Yeah. We talked about housing and business development. We also talked about our schools, as you mentioned, Mr. Hathaway, that we had that conversation previously. Now, I know, Dr. Hathaway, as well, that you have had some influence over the issue of food and concerning the food deserts that exist in Baltimore City. What is the current status on that, and how are you all overcoming that issue at this point?
Well, one of the challenges with the distribution of food is that is now really controlled by international conglomerates. I mean, that's why you see these supersized facilities in the surrounding areas. It's really controlled by outside that. I did have experience with a local local grocery owner that was seeking to try to create grocery stores in underserved areas. There's been a large movement with that. When you think of Charlie Burns, when you think of Henry Baines, they have always been thrust to create these opportunities. But what has happened is that the economics is challenging in those areas because they're competing with international conglomerates. And so their pricing makes it difficult for this. So one of the things that I'm saying is that maybe we need to just look clearly at expanding the public market concept to be the panacea for addressing food deserts in these underserved areas.
Are you saying something like the Lexington market and the East Point Cross Street market, things like that?
If you think about it, there was always markets: Holland's market, Lafayette market, Lexington market. All of those markets should be ramped up to be those places where we get the fresh foods and vegetables that we need in these neighborhoods.
Dr. Hathaway, between Lexington Market and Mondawmin, there isn't one Brussels sprout.
Yeah. That's true, or asparagus, except my brothers that are still, and we've got to support our brothers that are basically going around with these horse-driven carts. That was our response. That was our response to getting fresh fruits and vegetables to people in underserved
into our neighborhoods. Yeah,
but you didn't. But
how do we?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that pricing is not an issue if you've got the money to pay for it. Dr. Hathaway is correct. Yeah, the margins have always been slim in the supermarket industry. They were there for Charlie Burns. They were there for my good friend Henry Baines. They were there when Lena Boone did our supermarket right down the street on Pennsylvania Avenue. But price is not an issue if you've got the money to pay for it. So eventually it comes back to the relative disparity in the income and the wealth of the Black neighborhood in Baltimore City.
Yeah,
you can create as many Lexington markets if you want, but unless you're giving it away, you still ain't it's not gonna be self-supporting. Unless the government's going to have to step in and subsidize, because the economy as it exists is so detrimental to the interests of Black folk. Look, 99% of all people, if they're ever going to achieve economic stability in their family, are going to do it by what they earn on a W-2 and their wages. So forget all this other stuff about economic development. The issue is how much are the people going to be paid? The issue is with jobs, not how many jobs you have, but also how much do the jobs pay.
So, Mr.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So then as you're talking about this, absolutely correct. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, but it's so indicative of the poverty within the community that we're still talking about guys who are going through the neighborhood with a horse and buggy. I mean, how are we able to improve even that? Do we have business owners or investors who would even be interested in supporting the improvement of a situation like that?
Yes, and let me give you an example, because again, I'm going to talk about my good friend Henry Baines. When that ShopRite was being considered right at the corner of Liberty Heights and what is that, Hillsway or Hillsdale or whatever it is,
yes, Hillsdale.
That the community had an opportunity to put a brand new Stop, Shop, and Save in that space. By this time, Henry Baines had pretty much retired. He's in the ministry now. He's a great guy, and he turned over the business. I went to Henry and I said, look, are you interested in putting a supermarket in that location? Henry said to me, he said, Bob, I have never had the opportunity of owning my own new store. Right. Every store I ever had, I took over one that the white companies had deserted and left our people with nothing. I would love the opportunity while I'm still on this side of Jordan to own and operate my own store. I went to the community at that time and I said, look, because they had demolished a great footprint. I mean, what was the Lenny Moore's place and the other place? Several smaller black businesses that were taken out by that project. If they selected Henry, allowed him to build that store, you would have had room to put in all the other supporting black businesses that were there that got moved out of the way to make room for ShopRite. The community's response was, no, we don't want to. We don't like the name Stop, Shop, and Save. We want a full service supermarket, someplace where I said, wait a minute, guys. This man put food on your table when everybody else abandoned you. This man made food affordable for you when you didn't have a job.
Mr. Palmer, that sounds like pedagogy of the oppressed, where the oppressed take on the mentality of the oppressors. That's a book by Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I mean, they sound like the very people that started segregation.
Donnie, what do you covered what you see? I get that from Hannibal Lecter and Silence of the Lamb. Okay, you not only cover what you see, but you do what you're taught. Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, we do. The people were being led down that path, and the city, by the way, contributed at the time over $20 million to help ShopRite move in that location. Yeah, and I understand from sources that they're back at the city's doorstep now, asking for more money to help subsidize that location. Why couldn't that? Why wasn't Henry Baines' store good enough for our community? They'd fed East Baltimore, another place. Why wasn't, you know what I'm saying? So we have a mindset that we've got to change. Our problem is not white folk. Yeah. Okay. Our problem is not white. Our problem is our folk who think like white folk. Right. Right.
Can't attest that, Dr. Hathaway. I mean, when I think of what you're doing today, it's certainly along the lines of what the Goon Squad did years ago. They were very adamant about making and seeing positive changes in our community.
One of the things that you have to do is that particularly coming from the faith community, is because we are blessed that we work directly for people in the community. It's our job to be advocates for them as well. I don't think we can abdicate that responsibility. And so, I was blessed that I had the kind of oversight and training from Reverend Dobson and others. And they just placed in my spirit that you never rest. You got to continue to challenge systems to make certain that they are amenable to the needs of people that we love. And Lord, long as Lord give me breath, that's the work that I'm going to do.
Darius, any final questions before we wrap this up?
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask Reverend, do you still got your the cyber center? Is that still active? Because technology is key.
Technology is key. Not only do we have the cyber center, we are one of 100 Comcast lift zones. We have 5G service in that area. Not only do we have 5G service, I have Project Waves. So I'm connecting 250 families in that community to free Wi-Fi. And I got one of the strongest Girls at Code Club in the state of Maryland of African-American females.
So does that mean
Thank
the
you.
schools in your area are doing good? Because we had Councilman Zeke Cohen on, and he was saying that Comcast Essentials is horrifically failing our young people.
No, it's not. I mean, everything needs improvement. But what I was able to do and is that we are connecting. The Comcast came with after Essentials, and we've always been a Comcast Essential site. Comcast then came with their Lift program, which is 5G service. We've taken that 5G service and combined it with Project Waves that beams to the community. And so we are a hotspot for the community now to allow them to get free service onto the internet.
And let me just add, Booker T. Washington is one of the schools that you work with.
Well, we work with 5 schools. We work with Booker T. Washington, Furman Templeton, Samuel Coleridge Taylor, Utah Marshburn, did I say the one at Pennsylvania Dolphin, Furman Templeton. So we are in 5 schools. We've been committed to 5 schools since 2007. We've raised the extra with University of Maryland School of Social Work. We've raised $30 million. $6 million over 5 years to provide supportive services in those schools. So we are active in those schools.
Good deal. Kevin, any final questions or thoughts?
No, I think we've done a really good job of covering, the whole gambit of, what are some challenges that we're facing in our community, but then also what are some solutions and how do we as individual citizens need to participate? When you've got 43,000 citizens in one district and you've only got 15% of them participating or maybe even conscious of the situations that are going on, I think the issue is being more active. And so that's the point of this broadcast, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Dr. Hathaway, you have Mr. Bob, any final thoughts?
As one of the few remaining survivors of the original Goon Squad, I can tell you that the Goon Squad, the work Dr. Hathaway is doing now is continuation of those eras, of those days, and we need help. I mean, we just need help. There's no shortage of labor. There's always a shortage of laborers.
That's
right. That's it for me.
Dr. Hathaway, you get the final word, sir.
Man, but he tried to grab my preach, man. But I will say to you that people can contact us at actnowbaltimore.com. We will respond to the needs of people in our city.
Good deal. Thank you very much for joining us today. We'll be back tonight at 7 p.m. Kivette, what's happening at 7 p.m.?
We will have a mindful moment at 7 p.m. here on BlackUSA.News, and I'll be discussing our credit restoration as well as grief recovery and how that affects us emotionally, mentally, with our financial management.
And congratulations to Darius. He started his first show on Friday, and he'll be back this Friday. Are your guests lined up yet, Darius? I'll take that as a yes. Thank you for joining us today. Up today, gonna mark your day, and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it, regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am. Good morning, USA.